You're asking the wrong question.
Okay, but you'll understand that you have to answer the ones I'm asking.
I'll answer it. Yes, of course.
So are you cross about how much power the House of Commons has?
The question is, am I cross about the power that Parliament has? Parliament, yes, is sovereign, but it gets its power from the people.
So are you cross about the amount of power that Parliament has?
Well, I'll be certainly cross if Parliament's able to usurp the power that the people have invested in.
Who elected the House of Commons?
Who elected the House of Commons?
It's an echo.
Well, look, the people voted for Brexit.
Who elected the House of Commons?
Look, well, we know who elected the House of Commons.
Well, no, I just need you to say the words.
Who elected the House of Commons?
Yes.
The House of Commons has been lent power. It is lent
Who elected
power by the people.
Who?
The people
elected the House of Commons.
They lend power.
And the House of Lords reminded, I suppose, constitutional experts last night that the House of Commons exists to keep checks and balances upon the executive, the Prime Minister. So the power that was exercised by the House of Lords yesterday was essentially a reminder of the power that resides in the House of Commons, which is, of course, elected by the people. So why are you cross that Parliament has so much power?
Because it would appear...
Oh, so you are cross that Parliament has so much power?
I'll certainly be cross if Parliament...
And were you previously of the view that Parliament's powers had somehow been transported to Brussels?
Yes, absolutely.
So where's all this power come from now that's in Westminster today?
Well,
Is that the power that's come back from Brussels, or is that just power that we didn't know about before we voted to leave the European Union because we thought all the power was in Brussels? It's like new power that we found under the bed.
Well, Parliament is assuming it is taking... this could be an attempt to take away power from the people. Brexit was an expression of the populace. Brexit was an expression of the people.
But it wasn't, was it? Because 17.4 million people voted for something. But if you could find three people, one who voted to be like Norway, because prominent campaigners said we'd be like Norway, one who voted because they believed Owen Paterson when he said only a madman is talking about leaving the single market, then you'd have somebody who didn't vote for the same as the person who thought that we were going to be like Norway. Then you'd have someone who believed Daniel Hannan when he said that EU citizens' rights in this country will not be affected in any way, and they voted for it because they believed him. So that's three positions that are all completely different from each other. Then you've got people who believe David Davis when he said that we'd be doing trade deals in Germany the morning after the results. So anyone who believed David Davis voted for something different from what anyone who believed Daniel Hannan voted for, something different from what anyone who listened to Liam Fox voted for, something different from anyone who listened to anyone who suggested that Norway and Switzerland provided models. So we can all agree that the idea that 17 odd million people all voted for the same thing is absurd to the point of ridiculousness. So this phrase... Well, no, it is, because there's no way anyone who voted to be like Norway voted to leave the customs union and the single market, is there, Charles?
People vote...
You have to answer my questions at some point, mate. Is there any way that somebody who voted to be like Norway, because that's what they were told we were going to be like, could be described as having voted to leave the customs union and the single market?
Oh, that's very dishonest. That's very dishonest.
Could you just answer the question? I voted Brexit because I believed the campaigners who said we will be like Norway. I voted Brexit because I believed Owen Paterson when he said nobody is talking about leaving the single market. Okay? Now we're being told that we will leave the customs union and the single market under hard Brexit. Could you possibly, I mean, I don't want to be rude, but you do understand how the person who voted to be like Norway did not vote to leave the customs union and the single market?
I'm sorry, James, but...
I'm sorry too, but I just a yes or a no, because I'm essentially asking you whether 2 + 2 = 4, and the fact that you don't want to answer speaks volumes, Charles.
Look, James...
No, look, Charles, if I voted to be like Norway, did I vote to leave the customs union and the single market?
If you voted for Brexit, you voted to leave the customs union...
No, but I was told we wouldn't have to. I was told we could be like Switzerland. That's why I voted Brexit. So how can you claim that the person who voted to be like Switzerland is the same as the person who voted to leave the customs union and the single market? How could you claim that the person that believed David Davis when he said we'd be doing deals in Germany on the morning after the referendum voted to leave the single market without a trade deal? How could you, if you believed Owen Paterson when he said that absolutely only a madman would leave the single market and you voted for Brexit because you liked Owen Paterson, how can you now turn around to them and say you knowingly voted to do the opposite of what you voted to do. I mean, that's dishonest, Charles.
No, what I think you're doing is now trying to completely invalidate the vote.
No, I'm not at all. I'm pointing out that 17 odd million people voted for very different things, and to claim now that they all voted for the same thing is to treat the British public like idiots, and I'm uncomfortable letting anyone do that, whether it's a caller to this programme or a cabinet minister.
Well, I don't accept...
So let's just recap then. Are you here to argue that somebody who voted to leave the European Union because they believed either that we could be like Norway, or that we could be like Switzerland, or that only a madman would talk about leaving the single market, or that we'd be doing trade deals with the Germans on the morning after the result, or that it would be the easiest deal in human history? So anyone who voted for it because they believed any of those 5 positions, and we both know I could go on for ages and possibly come up with 500 different positions, are you here to tell me that actually, without realising it, all of those people voted for the same thing, Charles?
I am saying they all voted to leave, and you can't...
No, Charles, are you telling me that they all voted for the same thing? I voted to leave on the understanding that we would be like Norway. Now you're telling me we can't be anything like Norway. Are you still telling me that I voted for what you're telling me I voted for?
People voted for something.
Now, this feeling you've got inside now, that frustration you feel at the facts being laid out in front of you, that's called cognitive dissonance. And what makes you still cling to the notion that 17 odd million people voted for the same thing, despite having it very politely and intelligently explained to you how easy it is to prove that millions of them voted for completely different things from each other, that's the point at which you have to ask yourself what it is you think you're going to win. That's when you use a word like control, and then I come back to my original question, which is, why are you so cross that Parliament actually has so much control, Charles?
I'm cross that you're now trying to dissect...
damn dissections, eh? Why can't we just go with the simple slogans instead of complicated understanding? Dissections actually show you how things work instead of just letting you look at posters.
You cannot dissect every
I just did, Charles.
Of a vote.
I just did, mate. And the answer to the question that you're not prepared to answer is, James, of course I'm not dishonest or stupid enough to argue that somebody who voted Brexit in the belief that we'd be like Norway actually voted to be the opposite of Norway. Because you can't say that out loud, Charles, because then you'd realise how silly you sound.
James, you cannot go breaking down votes.
No, God damn it, that you would actually dissect something to find out how it works. Charles, I mean, that would be insane, wouldn't it? So, final chance, are you really here to tell us that somebody who voted to leave the European Union because they thought we could be like Norway or Switzerland actually voted to be nothing like Norway or Switzerland at all? And I'm going to insist on a yes or no.
I'm sorry, that is a trick question. They voted for
It is not a trick question, Charles. You just can't answer it. It's Simon Conway with